middle and high school. All classrooms in middle school and elementary school now have smart boards. This is a new device that's developed to help teachers out so they can really bring our kids up to snuff from an academic standpoint. All schools have laptops, iPads for individual use, and we're in the process of completing a weight room with new equipment. And I'd just like to, I think I'll be the one that need to be on this board to make sure that those programs are continuing to be implemented in our system and for the education and the growth of our students. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your opening remarks, and thank you for showing your concern in the children of Randolph County and their education. We're going to start with Mr. Davis and alternate with the rest of our questions. Our first question: what can be done to improve the safety in our schools? What is your stand on arming teachers? Safety in our schools.
Well, I have a background in security, so when I worked 10 years in the prison system, I'm very big on safety. I think it starts with the resource officer and in training. Not only with the resource officer being trained, but just finding out different trainings that are available, having some assistant principals, maintenance staff, teachers to go and receive proper training in emergency situations. As far as teachers being armed, I wouldn't agree with that because anything can happen. That's just like in the jails, the actual guards, they're not armed when they're back behind the walls. You can't take your firearms behind to a certain point. So you got to think safety when it comes to firearms. You wouldn't want that to have a disaster in your hands, but definitely safety, that's everybody's concerns, because a safe, secure environment creates a better learning environment.
In a school system, all the staff are considered to be security officers because anything out of the norm take place, they know to immediately contact the SRO officer and the principal, the assistant principal. What we're doing now in the school system, we are upgrading our camera system where we're going to have cameras, we're going to have the most sophisticated camera that a school system needs to have to monitor the action and the well-being of our students all over the system. We're also going to be doing that with all our buses. We're going to have cameras on all our buses so that we can make sure if something happens, we have documentation of what's going on. And once students know that you have cameras on your buses as well in your school system, they know that they're being watched. And we have some pretty competent staff that's rotating throughout the school system every hour on the hour to make sure no negative activity is taking place. So security is big, and I think that we are addressing that in the school system today.
Thank you, gentlemen. Our next question is directed to Mr. Cook first. What can be done to improve our system? And I'm thinking of 4 areas: academics, athletics, personnel, public relations. What can be done to improve our school in those 4 areas?
Academically, what can be done and is taking place right here at this time is making sure that we have competent staff that's teaching in a specific area that they went to college for. For example, sometimes you may have a teacher teaching science and they may have majored in another area on a temporary basis. But what we are trying to do at this point in time is make sure whatever area that you went to college for in your expertise, that's the area that we're going to be employing staff for. That person will have the capabilities of teaching that class and taking our kids to another level than someone teaching out of their specific area. When it comes down to public relations, what we're doing now is making sure that everything that goes on in this system, we're going to be posting in the paper. We invite the community to come to board meetings get on the agenda, ask whatever questions that you may have concerning the well-being of the school system. We want you in our school system. Come and visit our school. We want the public to be involved and know what's going on with their taxpayers' dollars. We want the peoples in this school system in this community to know that their dollars are being spent for the education and the well-being of the students. With the, what was the other one now? Other two?
Athletics.
Athletics.
Personnel.
Well, I think with that being the case, I think we should have better coaches in our school system. I think we're working in that area. We all know that Randolph County is big on athletics. Not just athletics, but it coincides with our academics. I think if we had some real solid coaching in our school system, which we're working on that now. We just hired a coach that we think is going to be significant for our boys, and we're giving a hometown person to give his best shot for the girls, and that's what it's all about sometimes. You have to give peoples in the community that have reared and grown up here an opportunity to see what they know. If you don't have the opportunity, you never know. So we're working in that area to make sure that we can draw the fans, the peoples in this community back to our football and basketball games. And the other one?
Personnel.
Personnel. We are doing a in-depth background, making sure that we don't have anyone to have any felonies or any pedophiles, or making sure that they come to our school system. In the past, we've heard that we get the rejects. That may not be the case all the time. If you don't acquire the teachers before a certain time, you have to get what you have left. So we're starting the recruiting a lot earlier in the ball game so that we can get better staff in a specific areas. What we're also going to be doing is making sure in the area of math and science, we're going to be offering supplements, because those areas of expertise are hard to find, and we're going to make sure that we can attract teachers in our school system by offering supplements. And those supplements could range anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 and maybe above to attract the best qualified personnel to teach in our school system.
Mr. Davis, academics, athletics, personnel, public relations.
You got to start somewhere, and I feel like starting with public relations, because it's going to take everyone to be involved. You can't just point the finger at the superintendent or the principal or the teachers and say, okay, they're responsible. It takes everyone, parents, students, and staff. So everyone has to become involved and take this and have a genuine concern about the success of our kids in the school system. With that being said, you've got to set a standard. Now, some people may meet the standard right now. Some people may exceed the standard. And some may be beneath the standard. But whatever your standard is, the ones that are not meeting the standard, now you've got to find some, whether it be students or staff, you've got to find some developmental programs to bring them up to the standard. And then we got to establish some accountability. People must be held accountable. If no one is being held accountable, then we just walk around and we don't care. But if I know that I'm being held accountable as it relates to academics, as it relates to athletics, there's got to be some discipline involved. And once a standard is set and we start to enforce discipline, then we'll see different results. Personnel, I'm big on recruitment and retention. I hear people say all the time, we need to go and start from the top and just change everybody. If you're constantly changing, then you're going to keep zigzagging, and the kids are going to be the one that's affected. Every single year, if you're introducing a new superintendent, a new principal, then the kids got to get used to the superintendent, everybody's got to get used to each other. So once we start to set a standard and hold people accountable to that standard, then we can move forward in a positive direction, and then athletics will come up, academics will come up, and we'll start to see actual growth.
Our next question deals with the budget. Mr. Davis, how can the budget be spent in a more efficient and effective way? Efficiently, effectively, the budget.
In all structural organizations, you've got to have some checks and balances in place. Somebody has to check it. And with that being said, I would look back five years at the budget each year and see how funds were appropriated and how monies were spent. And at that time, the different areas that goes into the school system, once we appropriate so much money to be spent in each area, we would, just using for an example, the transportation director, if you maintain your budget or you spend less, then we give your department a bonus. But we give an incentive because you haven't exceeded your budget. Now, if we can maintain our budget or not exceed it, we can start to have more money in our budget and go and put it maybe in giving school teachers bonuses when they're doing a good job.
Well, first of all, let me say this here. With the budget, we do have the checks and balances in our school system. The state is not going to allow you to take $10,000 and go out here and buy items that's not needed for the school system. That's why we have a superintendent that is intelligent enough and have the background to know not to overspend that funding. If you overspend the monies, every category in the school system, you have transportation, you have technology, you have general instruction, you have a list of areas, and you have monies that's allocated for that. If you exceed that, we get, as board members, we get a percentage of each category, how much is left in each category. So as board members and as superintendent, it's our job to make sure that those funds are not overspent. And also it's the job of the bookkeeper to let every different department to know that you only have X number of dollars left to spend in certain categories. That is watch like a hawk, because there's never been, that I can recall, there's been overspending and you have to shift money to another department because everybody has a designated amount. There's no room to share your amount of the budget with no other department. So we're making sure that those funds are being spent in an intelligent manner. And we depend on our bookkeeper, we depend on our superintendent, and it's also up to the responsibility of the board when it's brought to us to monitor that and make sure funds are being spent properly. And if you're not, that's what the state, we're audited by the state every year. If you spend a penny out of place, or you overspend, or you spend money that you have no business spending, oh, they will know about it. And that information is published on the website of the state, and that information is given to the public at anybody's request that want to know how the spending went, want to know how the funding spent, because they're not going to let you take money and allocate it in an area that's not designated.
Thank you. What about staff morale, Mr. Cook, first? What can be done to improve it? Staff morale.
Well, there's a lot of areas, and I know in the past we have had a problem with staff morale, but it started at the top. You got a superintendent that come in there with vigorous ideals, come in there with a plan that's going to make staff want to work and educate our students. And we're doing that right here at this point. Staff morale sometimes, unfortunately, it coincides with dollars. If you're treating your staff and you're respecting your staff and you're paying your staff proper supplements or incentives that is needed, that's going to be morale increase right there. Also, you let your staff know that I'm behind you. Come in and talk to me about your concerns, about your problems. No one is going to play a deaf ear on you about your concerns. We want to know the staff concerns so that those concerns can be corrected. And if staff come to board members It's been said that board members are not allowed to talk to staff, but that's not true. Sometimes staff have a deep concern. They may not want to go to the superintendent. They may not want to go to the principal. They see a board member in the store, on the street, they may want to talk to them about it. At that point in time, that board member can talk to the superintendent, and they can filter that information down to their principal and their assistant principal, the concerns of the staff. Everybody want to be respected. Everybody want to make a decent living. So once you combine those efforts together, where you're giving respect to your staff, you are addressing their concern, and you're paying them appropriately, then that will increase our morale. And that's what we're doing at this time in our school system.
When it comes to staff morale, being in a leadership position, first of all, you must realize that using the high school or the school system for an example, as a superintendent, as a principal, you cannot run the institution or that facility by yourself. You need teachers, you need principals, you need housekeeping, you need bus drivers, you have staff. So you have to make people feel appreciated. Small things means a lot to some people. Throughout the day as a supervisor, a simple phone call, how's your day coming? Is there anything that I can do to make your day better? Within reason. Just showing care and concern for your staff. That goes a long way with people. Even having, not going so far outside of boundaries, but having a relationship. If, using Mr. Gatson for an example, if he was a staff member, how are your kids doing? Just showing care and concern for him outside of just, he's not just an employee, but he's an individual that means something to me as my subordinate. So once you incorporate that with all of the leaders, now at the same time, yes, you hold people accountable, but you show them that you care. I went to a leadership training with the University of Georgia one time, and in the training we learned that when a person is doing something that you correct in private and you praise in public. So a lot of times we want to flex our muscles, so to speak, and show that we're the boss. But I was the captain at Macon State Prison, and I had 244 people assigned to me. And I made it known that I don't have to go around here every day saying who I am. It's already understood. I'm the captain. So no, you don't have, I didn't walk around, you work for me. No, we work together, because together, us working together, we accomplish the mission. And once you get people on board working as a team, then that's when you see your success.
Both of you mentioned the superintendent in your last comments. What is the best way to evaluate the effectiveness of the superintendent? Mr. Davis first.
First and foremost, you've got to have a list of the superintendent's job responsibilities. Knowing and being familiar with the superintendent's job responsibilities, and also as a board member interacting, I understand that there's a chain of command. And as a board member, I can't go out to the school and just physically interact, but having eyes and ears, keeping abreast of what's going on in the system, comparing that to the job responsibilities of the superintendent, that's how you monitor.
Well, in relation to the superintendent, as far as monitoring what we've done in the past, you have to set goals for the superintendents. You set the goals that you're looking for your superintendent to achieve and accomplish. For example, if you say you want to see test scores increased by 10%. At the end of the set time that you give, it could be 6 months, it could be the end of a school year. Then you come back and see if that superintendent has met or exceeded those goals. If you want that superintendent to increase the enrollment in the school system, you see what your enrollment is at this point in time. At the end of the year, you see what your enrollment is at that point in time. So you set the goals for your superintendent, and you pay close attention to make sure that that superintendent is meeting those goals. That's how you check the balance of whether your superintendent is meeting your goals. You give those goals, and if they meet them, then you know that what you have instructed him or her to do, they're being met. If not, then discussion must take place.
Now, other than the superintendent, and this to Mr. Cook first, other than the superintendent, how should we ensure that we have competent leadership staff? Other than the superintendent, what about the rest of the leadership staff?
Well, we have an assistant superintendent, and I know it's been a lot being said about the different staff that we have that have PhDs. We're hiring the most intelligent people that we can put our hands on. They're not drawbacks, because when you have an intelligent staff that's educated, well educated, you are expecting for that person to show that in the school system. For example, we have a superintendent with a PhD, we have assistant superintendent with a PhD, we have our principals, they have PhD. And it's not to say that everybody with a PhD is going to be the best job or the most qualified person. But when it comes down to the education of our students, we want to make sure that our students have the best quality people that it is to educate our students. So we start from that point. And at this point in time, the staff that we have in place, we think they're doing a good job. And if they're not, we'll see it midway of the year or coming up for next year at the end of the year, whether they're doing a good job or not. We take that very strongly, the education of our system. So how you can increase that is making sure you got a well-qualified staff.
As far as the superintendent is concerned, the superintendent has people in place that is up under his or her direct leadership. And that's why you hold people accountable. You give people expectations in writing. They have their job descriptions. And you do frequent, whether it's monthly or quarterly counseling. So if a problem occurs, you shouldn't identify with that problem 6 months or the end of the year. It should be some procedures in place where you can find out what's going on with that person in that leadership position early on. And again, it's about holding people accountable. And if the board is holding the superintendent accountable, and there's a clear line of communication between the Board of Education and the superintendent, and it falls on down from the superintendent to the principals and the assistant principals, then everyone is on the same accord. And that's how you would do that.
Mr. Davis first. Is there a place for town hall meetings and forums like this as they relate to the school system? This is a political forum that we're participating in tonight. Is there a place for those in the school system?
You mean, I don't quite understand your question.
This is a political forum. Do you believe that we should have political forums or forums or town hall meetings in respect to the school system?
About the school system.
About the school system?
Oh, okay, yes. Do I believe we should?
Yes.
Of course, yes. because it's not, we, the people, their concerns and their interests need to be known. Now, as far as how often, I wouldn't really say, I don't have that answer right now, how often we should have them, but should they be held? Yes.
In reference to the town hall meetings, in the past, we used to have our town hall meetings quarterly. We go to different areas of the county, and up until maybe about a couple of years ago, we had town hall meetings, maybe not as regular as they should have been, but we've had town hall meetings. We've had them at the superintendent campus in the cafeteria, and we've gone to other churches throughout the county where we allow individuals to express their concern, to speak about their concern, and say just whatever is on their mind as far as the education process, whatever may be going in the school system. So town hall meetings, I think, is good. It makes everyone in the system, in the community, feel that they are welcome, that they are acknowledged, that they can ask any kind of questions that they want to ask as far as what's going on in the school system. And as taxpayers, they should be able to ask questions about the progress academically and whatever area that they should desire to ask those questions. So town hall meetings, they are good because it just keep everyone abreast of what's going on in the school system. And where we've had most of the town hall meetings is out at the cafeteria on J.B. Smith Complex. But we have ventured out throughout the different areas of the county. We've done them over at the railway station over in Shelburne. We've done them at different churches throughout the county. So town hall meetings is always good to have to keep people abreast of what's going on in the system.
Mr. Cook, first. What can be done to stop the loss of students to Talib Charter and the STEM Charter School?
Well, what we are doing now, we're trying to be creative, offer different things in this system that no other system is offering. Just say, for example, we don't know of any system that's offering Spanish in elementary school or middle school, just in your high school. So we're implementing that right now in our school system to show parents that we are trying to educate our students and so that they are capable to dealing with the world when they graduate. They're taking Spanish in the elementary and middle school. They should be able to be well versed when they get in high school because in today's society, it's a multi-language country, and Spanish is the second largest language in this country. So those are one of the things that we're doing. Test scores, you can raise those test scores, they will come back. When what we're doing is implementing all type of technology with the smart boards throughout the system, iPads from first grade all the way to high school. The more technology that you have for the students in Randolph County, Randolph Clay, it will attract them back. Not just only that, but the extracurricular activities. The more extracurricular activities, we're going to be offering different extracurricular activities for as construction, as far as we've even talked about coding, offering that come the next year. Coding has begun to be a big market where our students learn the basic of coding. We are offering a certification in different areas for our students, something the other surrounding schools are not doing, and we're working in collaboration with Albany Tech. The more you have to offer the students in Randolph County, the more academics and the more extracurricular activity, that's going to attract more students back to Randolph Clay, and that's what we're working at. Not only that, but basketball and football. We all know that.
Structure and discipline. Everyone wants to know that when I send my daughter to school every day, that she's going to be safe. It's going to be discipline, and where there's discipline, there's a better learning environment. Where there's a better learning environment, of course, test scores are going to improve. And everybody wants to be a part of something great and something good. So there are certain schools in the area that people always talk about that school is such a good school. Well, I believe in my heart that Randolph County school systems can be that same school. There are some things that we need to do as far as raising the standard in order for us to get there. But once we look at some areas as far as structure and discipline, then that's half the game right there. That's half the battle, should I say. Because if the structure and discipline is there, then the teachers, they can do their job. But it's going to take everyone involved, as I keep saying. It's going to take the parents, it's going to take the staff, and it's going to take the students. Everybody taking this thing serious for what it really is, working together and communicating. And then, okay, with the communication, if there's an issue or concern that happens at Randolph Clay, with the administrators and the parents talking about this, working together, instead of the parents saying, okay, this happened, I'm gone. No, it has to be some communication and a working relationship developed. And then we can keep all of our kids from going to the charter system.
Our next question deals with Randolph County and Clay County. Mr. Davis, what future would you like to see for the Clay and Randolph partnership?
The two counties getting on one accord. The students, they come together when they're 10th grade. Well, it should be a connection even before. It's when a child from Clay County merges with a child from Randolph, it should be, the learning environments should be the same from early on, even down as far as elementary school. The standards should be the same. I think if the two systems can get on one accord as far as having the same structure, the same standard, and setting the same goals, and then it wouldn't be such an adjustment for the kids once they get to Randolph Clay. It'll be a smoother transition if they start early on.
I think that the transition between Randolph and Clay County has been, for the most part, good. A lot of the students in Randolph County and Clay County has gotten along well in the past, and you know, you've had your issues just like you have with the students in Randolph County have with each other. What we do, we collaborate with the school system in Clay County as far as scheduling the calendar, what days that we're going to be out, what days we're going to go to school. So we collaborate with them. As a matter of fact, the superintendent and assistant superintendent, and I have personally gone to some of the Clay County board meetings to see what their concerns were, and some of them has visited our schools to see what our concerns. So once you combine the concerns together and get on one page, then it's easy for it to be a connection there. The connection is not bad. We've had some differences in the past, but those differences have been corrected when it comes down to the academics of the students in Randolph and Clay County. We listen to the superintendent, at least our superintendent listens to the superintendent and give us feedback, and they do the same. So as long as you have a good line of communication between the superintendents where they will deliver that information back to their board of each and everybody's concern, things will have a tendency to even be better. It's not bad at this point. I would say that it's average, and it could be better, and it's getting better. So communication of each other's concern and attending each other's board meetings and making sure that there's an interaction with the students will only make the relationship stronger. And that's what we're doing at this point in time.
Board of Education has elected to renovate Randolph Clay for housing students in grades K through 12. Mr. Cook, what can be done to satisfy parents of small children about bullying?
Well, we're very strong on the bullying part because any parent and either student make contact with the staff, the teacher, the principal, the superintendent, say that someone is bullying them. That's something that we get on right there and then. That we made that known by sending literature out to the parents in Randolph County, to the staff, that these are the different areas you look for in those specific areas. If you have a student that may be withdrawn, don't want to be around the other students for whatever reason, you can almost identify that something is going wrong with that particular student, whether they be in elementary, middle, or high school. So the staff has had some background where they've gone to some different courses to identify bullying. And if that is done in the school system, see, everybody in the school system is a reporter. Not only just the staff, but the custodian, transportation director, maintenance, everybody's a reporter. If they see something going on wrong, then they have an obligation to report that to the appropriate staff so that that can be identified and dealt with quickly. So we're very strong on the bullying aspect of it.
As far as bullying is concerned, everyone needs to be informed of the policy. Everyone needs to be informed of the consequences. And when it does take place, if it takes place, then whoever violates, they needs to be held accountable, even if it's my child. You have to make some examples, and you gotta be straight by the book as it relates to bullying. It's gotta be communicated. Staff members need to be trained on communicating with students as it relates to bullying, receiving information. For an example, if someone is bullying someone, quite naturally a student is not going to openly confess it. So they've got to make the students comfortable enough where they feel confident to bring them the information. And once the information is brought to the staff member, then the staff member has to respond to the situation.
If you are elected, Mr. Davis, or re-elected, Mr. Cook, what are your priorities for the upcoming year? What are they? List them and tell them why you've chosen these as your priorities.
Recruitment and retention. I'm very familiar with Randolph County school systems. We have several qualified educators that leave this community every day, going to other communities, teaching in those counties. And I feel like if we can retain them here, they will have more genuine concern for our kids, versus a teacher that lives in Columbus, or one is just commuting wherever and they're driving back to Atlanta. I can't see that teacher in CVS or in the grocery store. They won't, because they're on the highway, they're gone. So I'm very big on recruiting and retention. Also, if we can retain good people, then our students become familiar with that staff member, that principal, that teacher, that superintendent, where we have a certain set of policies, rules, and regulations in place. And then 3 years later, someone comes in and they want to make adjustments. Not everyone, students and staff, has to get readjusted. So we can get going in one direction and keep it going and just continue to build. Safety and security. The high school, and we're speaking of K through 9 being all the way out there 7-8 miles from town. You got one resource officer, one armed officer out there. In the event of an emergency, it's going to take Sheriff Fairbanks and his staff at least 10 to 15 minutes to respond. So, safety and security, if someone, and we see it all the time on the news, so that's something that really we need to be on top of, is the safety and security of not only of our kids, but the staff members also. Because if someone goes out there and they just want to do a mass shooting, then it could affect a staff member. Programs. As you asked about, even with just the athletics, Mr. Cook spoke about the bands. We have a lot of parents in this community that when they leave home in the morning time, the school bus hadn't even ran. And when they come back in the evening time, their kids are home by themselves. So we need programs here, after school programs, to help with our students and the kids and their homework, and it also helps the parent. So therefore, if we had these programs, I just feel like that parent would be a little bit more appreciative of the school, because it helps them out as they're trying to work and provide a living for those students. Now, of course, there's some other things, but I may have 10 to 15 different ideas. But in anything, in any situation, you've got to prioritize and see which is more important. And if we take care of maybe these 3 things and get those down, then we can move on to other things. But we got to start somewhere. And I feel like if we can retain good staff and decrease the turnover rate and work on the safety and security. And of course, it goes without saying, just making sure that we're consistent and we're conscious as it relates to the budget.
Could you repeat that question, the last question?
What are your priorities for this upcoming year?
Well, academics and discipline is always a priority, or it should be a priority for any board member, because the two go hand in hand together. If you have discipline under control, the academics will follow. And we are looking at the different technology, the different programs. We have different specialists that's in our system every week, working with our staff to make sure academics is up to stuff, making sure that our kids and our staff know what they're teaching in the classroom and have a good understanding of what they're teaching. And when our staff know what they're teaching, academics is going to come up. Not only that, when you have a disciplined school system where you don't have fights, you don't have those interruptions, you don't have where parents and students feel that they're not safe, you're going to have a more conducive environment. So those are the things that we're working to make sure that they are kept up to the standards. We've always had those goals for our students in our school system, but I think increasing academic and more discipline, they will definitely make sure that our test scores go up in our school system in a much more safe environment.
One final question. This next question, beginning with Mr. Cook, has several parts, and I'll break it down into 2 questions. What has our system done well? What has our system done well?
Well, our system has done several things well, and just to give you an example of one, academics. We've had consultants throughout our school system for the last year, bringing different ideas and implementing different programs in the school system. One of the things that we've become a charter system where we have agreed that we will receive $500,000 for the next number of years, and with that, we have to meet the standards with the state. If we don't meet those standards with the state, our first year or our second year, those funds can be cut off at any point in time. So we must show the goals that we are implementing in our school system that we are meeting those goals as far as the state is concerned. Also, again, we just received a $460,000 grant. And that starts with our small kids. If we reach them early from an academic standpoint and provide them and their parents with the proper tools, then that will filter up in the next grades to come so that our kids will get a good balanced education. So those are the kinds of things that we're doing in our school system to make sure that we're meeting the standards and exceeding the standards.
In your opinion, Mr. Davis, what has the system done well?
Well, on last year in May, I had the opportunity to go to Washington, D.C. to cousin's graduation from Randolph County. And throughout the community, there are several people that has received their doctorate. And with that being said, the same education and opportunity that my cousin, the rest of them, Thomas Davis, Darnell Harvey, to name a few. I believe that a tree is known for the type of fruit that it bears. So we look at that and say, we look at their success and say, okay, the tree, it bore some good fruit. Well, now, we know that all kids doesn't learn the same. But at least in their situation, the opportunity, it was afforded. And that's my only desire for every child at Randolph Clay in the Randolph County school system is to receive the same opportunity that Thomas Davis received. I have a cousin that's a colonel in the United States Army. And I go back to the background, to the root, right here, Randolph County. So, and has our school done everything? Our system, have we done everything right and correct? No, there's room for improvement, but we haven't done everything bad. So, those are just to name a few of the things that Randolph County school systems has done well. And of course, the graduation rate is up.
Now, on the other hand, Mr. Cook, in your opinion, what has the Randolph County system done poorly?
Well, now, you know I'm not going to sit here and tell you that our school system has done anything poorly. Because if I cut myself right here now, you can see that this is the true pride of Randolph Clay that run deep inside. I don't just say it. I even have on red socks if you want to see that. But my point is that any institution can always stand for room for improvement. Okay, that's the reality of it. We do an assessment of our weakness and our strength in our school system, just like assessment is done of the superintendent's weakness and strength. And like the superintendent do an evaluation of the principal's weakness and strength, and that's done on down the line to our staff. And wherever the weaknesses are, we have to improve on it. Wherever the strengths are, we want to make them even better, because we're talking about the education of our students. And I don't think that it's nothing that's too good for the students here in Randolph Clay to make sure that they get a good, excellent education in the system. So we're working in the right direction. We're evaluating what we are not doing, may not be doing correctly, and we're trying to capitalize on that.
Mr. Davis, in your opinion, what has the Randolph County school system done poorly where there is room for improvement?
Well, I'm not on the board yet, so I'm gonna call it like it is. Discipline. The discipline and the structure, I've seen it from, my son graduated high school in 2012. Now my daughter is there. When I go out to visit the school, I can see in the change of administrations how the discipline is dropped. Athletics, there's a decline. And I really won't look at it as such a bad thing, because if we were once high on the totem pole as far as discipline and athletics, if we did it then, we can do it now. So it's just a matter of everyone, we speak about the red pride deep inside, but everybody has got to take hold of it and really mean it and be a part of it. We have so many people that we can talk about the problems, but what about the solution?
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I need to say, I am not a resident of Randolph County, so I won't have to make a decision when it comes to voting, but these gentlemen will get my vote.
Okay, through with part one. Now the part that you have all been waiting for. Let's see, yeah, we got the sheriff back, so we'll keep it orderly. We'd ask that you ask questions and that you we didn't come here to make personal attacks. Just want you to ask questions. We know you have burning questions on your mind. We want you to ask them, but we're adults and we want to be respected. We want to respect each other. And I don't want to have to call the sheriff to take you out. All right, so at this point, we'll open it up to the audience. I'll recognize and I'll ask that any question asked, we'll ask it to both of you. All right, who wants to go first? Mr. Brown.
I actually just have to want to direct my questions directly to Mr. Davis, if I may. I'm asking.
No, the
That's
rule
fine.
was,
Here you go. I got
ask the
it.
question, it will be
Here it
answered by
is.
both.
And I apologize, folks. This is not personal, it's just factual. I want to deal with facts. My question is, why is it that we're looking to replace technology and cameras when we've spent well over $500,000 or $600,000 on infrastructure, iPads, laptops, T1 lines, etc. within the last 5 years? We put in cameras on the buses, we put in cameras in the schools. Why are we now, within a 5-year period, going back and trying to spend hundreds of thousands or more dollars that if we had did what we were supposed to do in the first place, we wouldn't be where we are today?
So your question is,
My question is, what will you
why are we now having to replace
Correct.
cameras and technology again that were purchased recently? Is that right?
Cameras and technology, that's good. They are good. But I come from a situation where I worked in a level 5 prison for 10 years. And technology, it'll fail us sometimes. So technology, it will fail us sometimes. An incident will happen, you go back and pull the tape, and you got a blank. So I like the idea of cameras, but I'm more so fond of the idea of being proactive. The cameras, that's reactive.
No, that's not my question. My question is, why are we, 5 years later, when we put the cameras in, why are we purchasing or getting ready to spend hundreds of thousands or more dollars when we purchased a number of iPads, infrastructure, laptops? We know they fail, we know all that, but why are we purchasing more again when we spent over $1 million within the last 5 to 6 years?
Well, to answer the question,
Prevent that.
say again,
What would you do to prevent that from happening?
what would I do to prevent it from happening?
Yes.
It goes back to accountability. Okay, you have to have someone that's gonna be accountable for the equipment, accountable for working the equipment. And then in the process, also, everybody, if you're gonna work the equipment, you've got to be trained on it instead of just saying, hey, go and try and operate it. Because if you're not effectively trained on it, then you can't operate it.
Mr. Cook?
Well, first of all, with technology, we know that technology changes every day. There's always a need for upgrading in technology. And just to be honest with you, we had people that was left in charge out at our schools that stole our laptops, stole the different equipment that we had out there. So when theft takes place and you can't find out where it went to, now we have those checks and balances in place that's more stringent than they were in the past. So I don't think something like that will take place again because it's a check-in and check-out type situation now. But just to be honest with you, we've had them to grow legs and walk away. But at the same time, with the technology is something that changes every day. And after so many years, that technology become obsolete. If you want to stay ahead of the game, you get new technology.
All right. Thank you. We'll go. Al.
How you doing, sir?
I have a question for you, both of y'all,
Okay.
okay? Y'all talking about bullying, okay? You said staff had to pull together, okay? Even down to the bus driver.
That's correct.
An incident occurred. Bus driver had to stop, got all the kids off the bus. Because they had stopped in the middle of the road, it was fighting, okay? Fair fighting, them had to come. Like you said, 15, 20 minutes. That's not gonna work. Even they have bus monitor on there. It's not gonna work. You say everybody got pulled together, it's not gonna work. I can tell you that now. Okay? You even have teachers. You got teachers, your staff, that's doing that. Of course, you got some out there, I ain't gonna call.
Now,
That's
get
what
to
I'm
your
saying.
question now.
So, with the cameras at the school, hallway and all that, it still ain't gonna work. If you can't hear what's going on, we can see what we see. You got to
What's your
sound.
question, sir? What's your question?
What y'all gonna do to upgrade it and stop doing it, and like he said, stop
Oh, okay.
spending so much money on it?
Well, from my standpoint, the new system that we're hearing is gonna be an audio. And not just you're gonna be actually seeing, but you can be able to determine and hear a clear voice, clear picture. No system is perfect. I'll be honest with you. If something happened like that out there when they are transporting students home, just say 10 miles down the road, what is your option unless the bus driver calls the sheriff's department or police department to come out there? The cameras will give you an opportunity to see what actually took place. Then after it's reviewed by the staff and probably the police or sheriff department, then you can go from there as for what the plan of action is going to be, who created the problem, who started it, and whether or not the school will press charges in reference to who created that environment that created this chaos out there. So we have to do that. I don't see no other way we can do it. The bus driver out there, we can't just make something go away, but we have to start somewhere. No system is perfect. That's the only way I know. If we have good technology, the cameras that can really determine what took place, then it's reported to the proper authority, then we take the action from there. That's the only thing I see that we can do at this point. Now, we're always open to any comments or concern that people from the community. It's not to say that we take those and implement them, but they're worth listening to. It's a good possibility if you can be creative and come up with a way that we can do it. I mean, as a school system, our ears got to be open to what is best for the students at Randolph County.
All right. Just a reminder to the audience now, we want your question. We need a platform, so after then go to the corner. All right, yes, sir.
Yes, sir. I wish them good luck for the coming election. First of all, Mr. Davis, I heard a lot of things about accountability. So what is in your system, what in your knowledge is the hierarchy of accountability? If I wish you luck, if you become the board member another 10, 15 years, and under your watch, if 9 principals changes in 10, 15 years, and soon numerous students leave, when is the time you think is enough time for me to leave aside and let the new ideas come in? And when you think enough is enough, when your standard from school system from 200 goes down to 4 or 5.
Question?
Yeah, that's a question. So when accountability as a board member, when you think it's the right for you to say, okay, that I tried enough, what time frame you think is enough to leave aside and let the new people come in?
Wait a minute now. So your question is, how long should a board
Yeah,
member
board member
wait before doing what?
No, the question is very simple. If the accountability question is, the accountability comes with the results. So results are like our standard, which used to be 200 in Georgia, now we have 4 or 5. Our ranking is pretty low everywhere, and then 9, so 4 superintendents. Let me finish the president, and I'm coming there. So what is the accountability? Who is really accountable that would say, okay, I'm accountable, I tried everything, whatever new ideas that did not work, let me get aside and let somebody else come with a new idea. That's what I'm saying about accountability.
So
is the principle, my question is, we done tried accountability, we done changed the superintendent, we done changed the principal 7. So when is the board, how is the board accountable for that? Is there any accountability or none?
Okay.
The question is clear?
You got it now? He's basically saying you're a board member.
Yeah, as a
You
board
mentioned
member,
accountability.
I wish it here.
At what point do you hold people accountable? How is it going to look? What are you going to do to demonstrate that you're being accountable to the people who elected you? Is that?
That's right.
Okay.
As a board member, how are you accountable?
Well, first of all, we've got to understand that as a board member, I can't hold a teacher accountable. I can't hold the principal accountable. I'm holding the superintendent accountable. So we put policies and we've implemented things in place that the superintendent, so now just as well as the superintendent has to meet with his or her subordinates and do monthly, quarterly counseling.
Hey, 1 minute, just to interrupt you. I'm saying you have already done that in the last 10 years. I'm presuming you are there for 10 years. Under your watch, you done changed 4 superintendents, you done changed 6 or 7 principals, you tried everything. Are you anyways going to be responsible? Okay, I tried my best, my things ain't working, let somebody new come with a new idea, because my standard from here to here I've reached. Teachers are leaving. So that's what I'm saying. What is your accountability? You're going to keep changing the superintendent? You're going to keep changing the principals? You're going to keep changing everything? Or you ain't never going to be accountable as a board member? That's all my
Let me
question.
say this.
Wait just a minute now. We're on
Because I
Mr.
think
Davis.
you want to ask me that question.
You get your chance. But I think what he's saying is, looking at the situation, if you have a situation and it's not working, you've done this, you've done this, you've done this, you've done this, what do you do next? What would you do? How would you approach it?
How would you approach
He's asking if I'm going to, hold myself
it?
accountable.
Yes.
Of course I'm going to hold myself accountable.
Thank you.
I'm going to hold myself accountable. Now, I'm not going to wait until the 7th or 8th changing superintendent. I'm going to hold myself accountable and see what have me as an individual board member, what have I done wrong from the first change of superintendent? Because I'm not perfect, and if I made a mistake, I don't have a problem raising my hand saying, okay, look, I made a mistake,
Appreciate your
and
honesty.
I'll do better the next time.
Appreciate your honesty.
Well, first of all, let me say this. One board member can't do anything.
I know that.
Well, you want me to answer the question?
Yep.
First of all, one board member can't do anything unless he has two other board members. And when we have a 5 board member makeup, some boards have more, but when you have the majority, your way of thinking may different from the rest of the board members. But if you all, as board members, you should be able to collaborate together and come up with a solution that will be best for the school system. And if something is not working, you get rid of that particular staff in the school system if it's not working. And you know, there's 2 types of changes. There's what you call good change and what you call bad change. And you have to evaluate which is going to be most effective. Being on the Board of Education is never about a board member. It's never about a superintendent. It's never about a principal. It's about the performance and the test scores of our students. And you have to understand, if you are genuinely on a board,
Excuse me,
you're
now,
not,
just
if
simple
you're,
question.
if you're
I
just,
understand.
wait, let me finish the question, okay? You've asked the question, let me finish it. If you're on the Board of Education and you're genuinely concerned about education, you're not concerned about, your main objective is to be concerned about the academics and the education of the students in the Randolph County school system or any school system.
My question was simple, that in your watch, you are a board member. I understand take 5 together. I say, how you make yourself accountable? That under my watch, I've been there, I tried my best, 25 years, 30 years, whatever, 20 years. That thing happened. You think board member is accountable at all?
A board member.
Can they step aside or no, or they gonna keep trying forever? That's all the question. Just say, yeah, I'm gonna keep trying, this is not a board member's responsibility.
Well, let me give you
That's
a-
all, the yes or no, that's all. You say board
You
member
want,
is
you
not
want
responsible.
to ask the question and then answer, or you want me to give you an answer?
Go ahead.
Board members cannot make a decision individually. It's done by that board. And you gotta have the proper votes in order to get anything in a school system. And that's, whether you're on the school board, whether you're on the city council, county commission, you have to collaborate with each other to get anything done. So, if you are genuinely concerned about what's going on in the school system, you work your behind off to make sure that the performance, but still, one board member, one city councilman, one county commission can't do it. You gotta have a collective group that are working together for the same goal in any institution.
No, my question just,
wait a minute
this was just.
Whoa.
Just
Time out.
2 minutes.
Time out. No.
1 second,
I'll
okay?
come back to you.
No
We have some
problem.
time.
I was a moral question rather than a technical question. Morality, that's all.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Cook, in
Yes,
your
sir.
opening speech, you talked about all the extracurricular activities that you implemented back into Randolph this year.
Not that I'm implementing, that the board is
That the board
implementing.
you're part of the board, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. As an alumni of Randolph, 99 graduate, Spanish, band, chorus, we had all that from 95 to 99 when I was there. So my question to you all is, if you're gonna accept the praise of bringing it back, are you willing to be held accountable for it disappearing?
Well, let me just say this. When a board vote on something, you can have one board member or 2 board members don't want it to happen. But if the majority of that board want it to happen, it's gonna happen regardless of what. And in those cases, that is what took place. With the band, with ROTC, everybody knows that ROTC is a good discipline tool in the school system. When that was dismantled in our school system, I was the first one that screamed murder. When the band was taken out of our school system, I was the first one that screamed murder, because those extracurricular activities, they were a tool that was used to keep academics and discipline in place. In order to do anything in a school system, if you don't have the majority of the votes, only thing you can do is complain about it and work to try to collaborate with the other board members to keep it from happening. In those particular areas, I did it. It didn't happen. Other board members, the majority of the board members wanted to take place, and that's what took place.
All right. Mr. Davis, how would you respond to that?
Well, of course, we know that extracurricular programs are important. And as we, that's been proven. So when things are important to the community, that's why me, myself personally, it's important to me that I develop a relationship with all of the board members, all the other four, so that we can have a level of communication. Whereas I may be in a place or a position where I'm accessible to the community and I can bring back the concerns of the community and express to the other board members, hey, look, this is something that we really need to address, to try and get everyone to come together on one accord and say, look, this has worked for us. We really need this. Our community want this. So instead of us as one or two individuals voting against it, let's come together. And it's, number one, it's in the best interest because it's been proven. And also, this is what the community wants.
One more question. Okay, again, as an alumni of Randolph, when I went there, the only thing I knew of was one superintendent. Do you think it's necessary for a school with half the attendance that it had in past years to have a superintendent and an assistant superintendent?
Well,
To me or to Kevin?
Both.
Okay.
first of all, we've got to understand the appropriation of funds. Okay, if that position is not being funded locally, and it's a federally funded position, then for the position of either assistant superintendent, assistant transportation director, or whatever, if we can get it, then that's a bonus for us. If we can get it. Now,
Well, we don't need, I mean, the job was ran by one person with double the attendance. So why do we need both of them with half of the attendance? It's a waste of funds.
again, we must understand how funds are appropriated. Okay, what I'm saying is, if I hear your concern, if, let's say, the assistant superintendent, if we, and I had the same question myself, if we could take that, her salary, and give it, appropriate it somewhere else, then you have a legitimate concern. But if you can't appropriate the funds anywhere else, then we may as well keep it.
We got a lot of places that we can put funds.
All right, let me, this is a good one.
Let-
Let me throw this in from
Please let me
experience.
answer. Please let me answer.
Well, let me throw this in, in fact, Brother Kevin now. Let's, for the sake of his question, assume that those funds for the assistant superintendent can be spent somewhere else. Then let's take it that way. Because that position, it could be blended funding or whatever, but either way, whether it's federal or state, then I think that's optional. in
Oh,
terms
if the
of how it's
funds can,
staffed.
if the funds can be appropriated somewhere else all day long,
There you go.
all day long, you chop it, I mean,
Thank you.
because, chop it and appropriate the funds somewhere else, and we can give teachers some raises, I mean, all day long.
Yeah, thank
You
you.
should, Mr. Jenkins didn't have a.
Well, let me just say this.
Let me clear up. I don't want to be a part of this now. A lot of stuff has changed since '09.
Well, let me answer that question, if you don't mind.
All right, Mr. Cook.
Well-
The assistant superintendent question, yeah.
Well, assistant superintendent, superintendent overall, everybody's not about Jenkins, first of all, okay? And in this, you want me to answer the question, sir? I answer
Let
the
him
question.
answer, let him answer.
In this particular arena here, we have a person that is assistant superintendent, basically entitled. That person is over our federal programs. That's how the assistant superintendent is paid over federal program. And to assist the superintendent with other areas as far as academics, as far as grants, as far as testing, that person is paid a supplement, which is not a significant supplement for the assistant that they do. So there's not a specific salary for a superintendent's position. That person is over federal programs, and for the assistant that they give the superintendent, they're paid a supplement, which is probably about 7, 8, maybe $9,000 at max. So it's not an area where funds have been appropriated for a superintendent. They over federal programs, and that's how they make the buck of that salary, and they get a supplement to help out with certain areas with the superintendent.
All right, let's get a new one. Back down. Who's first? We'll go there.
I got a lot of questions, but I only got one short one. What are y'all's intentions to get our enrollment back up in Randolph County?
Well, I think, which one you addressing to me?
Both, yeah,
Well,
both
answers.
well, basically what we are doing, like I said earlier, we are offering different exciting things in our school system to attract students back to our school system. Like I indicated to you, more technology, more extracurricular activities in the area of Spanish, in the area of more basketball, more football. We have students now in elementary school that are taking, we have extracurricular activity in the girls basketball, in the boys basketball team. We're going to be offering more construction class. We're collaborating with Albany Tech to come in and assist us with different areas, CNA, nursing program. It's just a host of things that we are going to be implementing to attract students back, and we're collaborating with Albany State to make our system more attractive, where we're bringing the band back to our school system, more chorus, and just more activities for our students. So that's what we're doing to attract more students back to Randolph. And it's beginning to work.
Mr. Davis. I guess the question for you, what can be done to attract students back?
Again, what I said earlier is we've got to establish some consistency with our discipline and our structure. Because I don't know if you have children in the school system or if you're just a taxpayer, but either way it goes, if I feel comfortable, a lot more comfortable sending my child to a place that I know that there's discipline and structure. So when she leaves home in the morning, she's going to return back safe the same way I sent her to school. Programs, after school programs. When my son was in elementary school, middle school, some years ago, they had after school programs. These kids were able to go to Atlanta Braves game, Atlanta Hawks game. If a lot of these kids in this area would never ever had an opportunity to do those things if it had not been for those after school programs. So I would like to see some of those programs come back. Things that's gonna help the parents. And if we're helping the parents, then quite naturally, they're gonna be more involved in the school system. And they're gonna want their kids to be here because Randolph County is offering more.
I got a simple question. Last one. You talk about all this new technology and all this. Why in the world did we lose them to start with?
I think
So our
we've
education
already-
system,
What, say it, could you read again, sir?
get active enrollment back up. Why did we lose them to start with?
Well, you have families that move from different parts, different counties all over, and you have families that may be, family member may be disgruntled about whatever reason and want to take their kids out of the school system. So I can't speak why parents would move their kids back into the school system, but I can say this. We're going to do everything that we can to offer different programs and implement new ideas to show parents that we are concerned about your students, we want to educate your students, and we want your students back in Randolph Clay.
Comment, Mr. Davis. So that was for you. All right.
Okay. Good evening, guys. Couple of things. I want to commend you two guys for being here,
Yes, sir. Thank you.
because just being here, just showing up, it speaks volumes. That tells us right there that you have a deep interest in the well-being of our kids. My question is, what do you feel is the biggest problem, socioeconomically, emotionally, facing our students currently enrolled, and what specifically would you do to solve that problem?
Well, I go first. That's a hard question, Ms. Brown, but I will do what I can, and that was a good question. In today's climate, you have, our students are dealing with so many different problems. You never know exactly what's going on in the home environment. I remember years ago, you don't never know whether that child is getting the attention that they should be getting from home. You don't know whether that child is getting the proper food from home. You don't know whether that child is adequately clothed. So you got so many different social factors that are there that can impact our students. But our staff is trained to identify what is going on with a child. And if a child is not getting enough food, then we want to make sure that that child, when he come to school or he or she come to school in the morning, even if they miss breakfast, we want that child fed, because if that child doesn't get adequate food in the morning time, can't function in that classroom all day to lunch. If that child is not adequately dressed, we have what we call a clothing bank. We want to make sure, not what everybody will know about it, but we want to be able to make contact with that child's parent or guardian. It could be a grandmother, it could be a cousin, it could be whatever. You never know what type of environment that student is going to. But we want to make sure that that child is addressed in a way of making sure he or she has adequate clothing, adequate food, and we want to make sure that the environment is conducive. If there's something going on in the home environment, it's the school's responsibility to find out and try to come up with some way, shape, form, or fashion to help out, even if it's including getting with DPACs and say, look, we got a student that we need ABC for. This is impacting the performance of our child, and they are our children. And so we try to work to make sure that we can do something. And let me just tell you this here right now. I know there's been several parents in our school system where their lights have been cut off. We made sure, or certain board members, and I won't call their names, made sure that their lights was cut back on. We made sure that when we find out that a kid is not getting adequate food, I won't call that board member name, but we make sure that that household is going to get some food one way or the other. And I'm talking about same food that you and I need, not just something to fill them up. So we take that very seriously, because we want our students prepared to be able to come to school, to be able to be adequately dressed, adequately fed, and have adequate environment at home so that learning can be conducive. You don't have that, learning is going to be a problem.
Can you repeat your question again?
Oh, no.
That was the major problem facing kids, social,
Yeah, what
whatever.
is the single, if you could break it down to single, biggest problem, socioeconomically, emotionally, facing our students currently enrolled? And what specific steps would you take to try to alleviate those?
I think socially, peer pressure, kids trying to fit in, and communication is the key. Communication from parents, students, teachers, everybody has got to be involved in this process. Because, again, as I say, with peer pressure, social media, you have kids trying to compete. I've known of situations that has occurred at the high school, middle school recently because of students not fitting in because of the tight clothing that they're wearing. So issues like that, they start out small, but they become big and they interrupt the learning environment. So that's why it's important that for the staff to be involved, to really be in the know and communicate with the kids. Also, and once they're communicating with kids, information that they're receiving, passing it on to the parents. And the parents, they have a responsibility at home instead of just saying, okay, I'm gonna send my child to school. We have a responsibility at home, so it's everybody having to just take ownership and saying that, okay, I'm going to do my part. And if we all do our part, because one thing about these kids, we all know that as far as this technology is concerned, give them an iPad, give them a cell phone, and they're whiz at it. So if they can be so efficient with this technology, quite naturally, if they can learn this, they can learn what the teacher is putting out. But the environment has to be conducive.
I will say this, Mr. Brown, to your question, I could not find just one specific, because they go hand in hand together as far as the learning environment. I hope at least I tried to answer the best that I could at that juncture.
I agree.
Ms. V?
I just have a little simple question that probably be answered real quick. I substitute a lot out to Randolph County, and the children, when time to go home, no buses don't be there for them. I want to know what can be done about that. Sometimes it be 4 o'clock and we have to stay there with them until the buses get there. I want to know why they don't be there when the children get out.
Well, it could be a delay if it's going through the high school. If they're going out to the high school, it could be a delay with students getting on the bus at the elementary school. That would probably run them behind. We don't want to leave anybody, kids, over to the elementary school and they have to connect to a bus down to the high school. It could be that. I'm not saying that is the case, but those have been some of the experiences that I've heard about in the past. But we always try to make sure that our bus drivers, we want our bus drivers to be on time to their destination, to the elementary school, to the high school, because at a certain time of the day, the parent is expecting their child to be there.
And the children have to wait outside. When they let the high school children go when they be away.
Right.
But when I work in middle school, we have to stay in the room with them because they don't want them out.
Right.
With the high
Right,
school
because
children.
for the safety reason.
Yeah,
For
a
the
safety
safety
reason.
So,
And it like be 4, sometimes after 4 o'clock when
well, like I said,
buses get there.
it could be something that's taking place at elementary school. That shouldn't be the case, but that'll be an issue that I will definitely bring to the attention of the superintendent.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Your response to that? Of what?
When I worked for Department of Corrections, we had this thing called 5 Ps. Prior planning prevents poor performance. And even in the midst of that, it's all about communication. So just as you brought it here, let me ask you a question. Have you addressed that with Dr. Williford at the middle school? Dr. Davenport?
I have.
Okay,
With
now,
Dr. Wilbur, not Dr.
again, and the thing about it is, it's all about communication. Everybody should be in communication with this. Mr. Prince, Dr. Williford, Dr. Davenport, the superintendent. Some issues should be handled at a level, it shouldn't even get to the superintendent.
Well, whose job is it to do this proper? I mean, I just want to know why we have to stay
The
there.
transportation director, is his job to do.
So you wanna go
I
home?
want
You
to
don't
know,
get overtime?
is it my job to go to the transportation
The
man's job?
transportation director should
Well-
make sure.
Well, what I'm saying, not necessarily your job, because there are other teachers also, but it's everybody communicating. Okay, as we say, okay, it happened one time, we don't know, it could have been something that particular day.
Oh, no,
That,
it
so,
happens every
if
day.
that's what I'm saying.
This happens every day.
This is what I'm saying. So after it happens a few times and it becomes consistent, now it's time to address it, because it shouldn't keep on happening day after day after day. Because now it's time to look at this as far as logistics, as far as now, okay, you know, maybe we need to have a round table and say how we're going to transport our students. You know, instead of letting it go on and on and on. We address things when they're small and nip it in the bud.
All right. In order to I'll take one more now.
One more? Okay.
From a newbie.
All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for coming to the forum, and we appreciate your honesty and everything. And what I'd like to know, and I'd like to just ask both of you, you know, on the school grade system, what would you give this overall school now? Would you give it an A, B, C, or D?
Oh, yeah, I would give it A in learning.
Yeah.
Wait, let me tell you why. Let me tell you why. See, that's a broad question. Let me tell you why I would give it A in learning. A lot of times, your efforts count for something. And I can honestly say that our school system is working very diligently and hard to make sure we meet the needs of our staff as well as our students from an academic standpoint, from a social standpoint, making sure when you start putting hundreds of thousands of dollars and getting grants in a school system and bringing consultants in for our teachers, when you start doing that to make sure that they are going in that school classroom and delivering good quality education to our students, the efforts and the money that you spend, that means a lot. We're upgrading everything from A to Z to our students. Like I said, we have smart boards throughout the entire system. We have iPads throughout the entire system. We're upgrading the camera system on our school buses now. You asked me something, that was a very broad question, that was a very good question. But what would, sometimes rumors are not the reality. Because you hear a lot of rumors about what's going on in our school system. The only way to find out what's going on, come to the board meetings. Get it on the agenda. Ask the question. Don't believe what Jack, Joe, and Kay is saying. Come there and get an answer for yourself.
Okay, Mr. Davis? No, I'm sorry.
Okay,